Okay, so it's moved to 9:30, so we'll make a start on today's meeting. I declare the council meeting CL 23/16 open and welcome everyone present. We've got some guests with us today as well. So I'll start with our karakia. Whakatau mai te wārua, whakawātea mai te hinanaru, whakarite mai te tinana, kia ea ai ngā mahi. Ai. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and the consequences of that. I don't think we have any apologies today, but note that Councillor Sol and Councillor Granger are joining us on Zoom today. There are no late items, so does anyone have a declaration of interest on today's items, please? No, not seeing any. So there are no public excluded items. And I'm not aware of anyone who wishes to speak in public forum this morning. So with that, we'll move on to the Community Board minutes for receipt, starting on page 8, and with the minutes of the Katikati Community Board meeting on the 20th of September. Can I have a mover and seconder for those? Councillor Henry and Councillor Joyce, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of the Mokuroa Community Board meeting on the 26th of September. Councillor Thwaites, Councillor Murray-Benge. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of the Te Puke Community Board meeting on the 28th of September. Councillor Wickers. Councillor Daly. Yep, all those in favour. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the Makatu Community Board meeting on the 3rd of October. Councillor Crawford and Councillor Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, I think we'll go with. For the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of the Waihi Beach Community Board meeting held on the 9th of October. Councillor Coxhead, Councillor Henry, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And so moving on to page 57 and the minutes for the Strategy and Policy Committee held on the 28th of September. I shall move those. And Councillor Crawford seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And lastly, the minutes of the council meeting held on the 3rd of October. I shall move those. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour second those. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So moving on now to page 74 and our report. We've got the return of the unformed road to Tawhitinui, Moai and Papakainga. And I think, do we have Corey to introduce this one, please? Corey and Chris.
Morena kia tātou. E te koromatu ai mua I te tuku I te wāhanga ki a Corey, tēnei rā katoa ki te mihi atu ki a koutou o te whānau o Tawhitinui, I runga I te whārikihi o tēnei kaupapa kei mua I te aroaro o tō tātou nei kaunihira. Kaore e kore he mea nui, kua tai tātou ki te puawaitanga o ngā moemoe nō reira tēnei rā ka mihi atu ki a koutou. Anō hoki te whakaaro atu ki a rātou kua wehe atu I te tirohanga kanohi. Ka mōhio au ki tērā o ngā mate kei wanganui a koutou. I runga I tērā rangatira kua ngaro atu o te whānau Leison. Tai atu rā ki tērā o ngā rangatira o tātou o te kaunihira. Arā ko whare kōnehu te moni, a Horus. Tērā e taputu ana ki roto o Haraki Marae, anō reire ngā mate haere oki atu. Tēnei rā te mihi atu ki a koutou, o tira ki a tātou katoa. Your Worship, I just thought before we gave it over to Corey to introduce the report, just acknowledge our guests who have come in support of this kaupapa. Obviously, it's a very significant one for them. But I just also wanted to acknowledge that there's been a lot of tangihanga across our district. And I just wanted to take this chance to acknowledge the passing of Whare Kōnehu Te Moni, Horus Te Moni. He was a member of our partnership forum for a number of years and he passed away 2 days ago and he's lying at Haraki Marae in Te Puke at the moment, so our thoughts are with the whānau there at Te Aroa. So I'm just going to pass it over now to Corey. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koutou. Just building on what Chris said too, I just wanted to acknowledge that the whānau of Tāwhitinui are here with us today, but also the mahi that they've done to progress the aspirations of their whānau and getting it to this point, just before we get into the report. So I'm happy to take the report as read and note that there were quite significant discussions around this kaupapa with the whānau from Tāwhitinui at the workshop in August, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to speak to those.
Okay, so I look for questions of Corey. Then, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Murray-Benj.
Will this enable more houses to be built?
So my understanding is that the return of the unformed road will enable about 4 additional houses to be built as part of the Papakainga.
No one else? Okay, in which case there are 4 recommendations before us. And so I look for a mover and seconder for those. And I see Councillor Thwaites and I see Councillor Murray-Benj. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would like to recommend to move here the adoption of recommendations 1 to 4 as on page 74 in the paper. If there's a seconder, I'm happy to speak to it.
Councillor Murray-Benj has indicated she will, so yes. So would you like to speak to your motion?
Occasionally good things happen here at council and progress happens, and this is one of those days, and I welcome this with open arms. So I was talking to Brian just before, and I see activity starting adjacent to it with an old building making way for the site. So I think this is outstanding. I'm glad council has looked at the other parts of the road and included it in the recommendations too. I think areas C and D. So I think that's a great result, and look forward to ribbon cutting ceremonies at the Marae Papakainga. Thank you.
Councillor Murray-Benj.
Sir, I support the recommendations because it's just common sense what they want to do. And so it's a simple but serious movement forward. And I think that will give a lot of good things happening within the Morai area. And it's good news for the Kaimai ward as well. So thank you.
I'll say something then if no one else is wishing to speak. So yes, I'm supportive of this kaupapa. I think we can all support the need for more houses, and the return of land to Tangata Whenua is always a special moment. And I think this will be one of those. I'm pleased that council, and I think Councillor Granger in particular, saw the vision and went further than was initially requested of us. I think that was an eminently sensible thing to have done. I'm fully in support, and having also checked out that the paper roads are unlikely ever to be used for the purpose for which they were taken. So I think that's worth noting. But yeah, support this kaupapa. Before I put the motion, are there any other speakers for or against? Councillor Joyce.
I don't want to take up too much time, but I do feel that we should all, we should do this, and ditto to all the previous speakers, really. I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but kia ora as well.
So with that, Councillor Daly.
Yes, I'd also support the recommendations. I would like to commend the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development through their Whai Kāinga Whai Oranga funding and of $2.5 million. And I certainly hope that the change of government doesn't mean that this sort of initiative comes to an end, and that the new government does keep progressing initiatives like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So I want to make a suggestion slightly unconventional, but in recognition of this special moment and to share that moment with the whānau who are with us, I'm going to suggest we break for morning tea so we can have some whanaunga tanga with them there. So if that's okay, we'll adjourn for morning tea and come back at 10 o'clock. Okay?
Does that mean we can go out and have our tea? up
Absolutely,
here?
that was the idea. It's in the foyer rather than our lounge, so we can do that. Before I do that, I also want to, CEO John wanted to say a word or two.
Thank you, Mayor Dinya. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate a lot of the words that have already been said. I don't get to vote, but if I was, yeah, look, this is a significant thing, and not only are we providing additional housing for whānau where it's needed, but we're partially undoing a significant wrong that was done around whenua Māori. So the decision today here is incredibly significant. I want to thank Rachel and Chris and the Kaupapa Māori team and whānau that have come in today for all of the work. I know this is a significant step in the right direction, so thank you.
Thank you, John. So with that, we'll adjourn now until 10 o'clock and have morning tea. Thank you. Okay, can we take our seats, please? Okay, so it's just gone 10 o'clock, so we'll crack on with the meeting. So we're up to page 84, and we're looking to adopt the Members' Code of Conduct 2325. So, Greer, so you up on this one? Page 84, Councillor Murray-Bench.
Morena tātou. So this is the second time this report has come to council with including information. So essentially what we've done since the last time this report came to council is that we have reformatted the code of conduct with the requested changes that as a result of the workshop that we had in July. Those are detailed in the report. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Greer? Councillor Joyce.
So as I understand it, to pass this today, it has to be a 75% vote. Is that correct? Okay. I'm a little bit confused with some of the provisions. For example, in your report, Greer, it says the CEO is covered by this, but at the top of the actual code of governance, there's no mention of that. And there's a reference halfway through the code saying if the complaint is against the CEO, but actually it doesn't say, nothing personal, John, stress, there's a logic issue here where the report doesn't actually say it covers the CEO. Well, then the report that we've got in front of us today is incorrect. And I'd be surprised if it did, because it's an employment matter rather than a code of conduct. So that's confusing me. It talks about a binding or non-binding recommendation, but I can't see in here, so if you can help me, any process that comes to a non-binding report. So that there seems to be a logic gap there. So can I get some guidance on that?
So can you repeat that the last
Well,
bit? Because I think the bit about the CE is a bit of a red herring. I think what we tried to do there was that the CE may make a code of conduct complaint.
Well, that's not what it says. I'm sorry, it's really not what it says. In fact,
Can you highlight exactly where you're talking
okay,
about?
so page 6. First of all, in the covering report, it says that the CEO is included, right? So it says, it's not numbered. That if the complaint, number 3, that if the complaint is about the mayor or the chief executive, so the covering report says the chief executive is covered, the top of the code of conduct doesn't mention that again. And then I think it's on page, I'll just make sure I've got my numbers right. Further down, there is a reference to if inside the code, about halfway down, that if the complaint is about the CEO. So we've got conflicting advice about whether the CEO is covered or not, right? So that...
I think you're over-interpreting a bit. When you
Oh,
say,
hang on, I'm not.
If the complaint is about the CE, it means involves the CE. So if
That's not what it
if he
says.
makes the complaint, then it involves him.
No, that's not what it says. That's not what it says. And it does certainly not what it says in the report at the top, right? Number 3 is very, very clear. So that to me is is unclear and it needs to be clarified. We need to be exactly clear on who's covered by this and who's not. So that's my first. If you're saying he's not covered, then we have a problem because the report refers to complaints about the CEO. The second question is whether.
So can we just deal with that one first? Which wording in the code of conduct would you like to change?
Well, first of all, it's the report at the top because
Okay, the report, we're not adopting we're receiving the report, not adopting the report. We are adopting the code of conduct, so that's the wording we need to change.
I'll have to find it. I thought I had the right page number, then I just looked at it again. Page 11, is it? Thank you. Someone's ahead of me, as always. Yeah, I'd written down page 6, but I think that talks about who's covered, but yeah.
Rachel, you've got a
Mayor James, I'd just like to make the point, while councillor Joyce is finding the correct place in the Code of Conduct, that those paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 within the substantive report reflect the feedback that councillors wished to see in the Code of Conduct through the workshop process we went through. So I appreciate that it might feel that there's not a direct alignment between the actual Code of Conduct and the report, but that is because it's a verbatim reflection of the recommendations that the elected members wished to see broadly encapsulated or felt were missing from the Code of Conduct template.
So I couldn't see it on page 11, I'll find it. I mean, my general thing is that this is going back to the beginning of trying to search this thing is rather difficult on the agenda. But there's definitely a reference in there to a complaint about the CEO. We say it's page 11, Grant. Yeah.
The actual thing that you're looking for, the statement is on,
The other thing we could consider, Rodney, since you're unable to find the wording right now, is that if we agree that we're talking about when the complaint involves the CEO rather than it's about him, we can change that as a minor editorial edit, which is recommendation number 5.
It's
I think we all understand what we're trying to get to here.
Okay.
There's maybe some loose wording that
I'll find it before we get to the discussion. The other one is that I'm confused because it refers to binding or non-binding findings, but there is actually no process in the Code of Conduct to come up with a non-binding. It only talks about binding.
But the answer there is that it is up to the investigator, I think it is, whether it'll be a binding or non-binding.
So it doesn't say that on page 12. So I've got the reference, that one. So page 12, it says, on completing their investigation, an independent investigator may dismiss a complaint or make a binding ruling to the governing body.
Yep.
It doesn't actually say they have the ability to make a non-binding ruling. That's quite clear wording, so that's missing. Another one is on page 9. It refers to an LGNZ document and says we must keep to that document, but it has no provision for if that document is changed. So if the LGNZ changes that document, then our Code of Conduct changes and we have no reference to that. So how does that work, please?
So which page was that?
Page 9. I just think there's some things undercooked, but I'll save that for when we get a mover in a second.
Sorry, which page was your comment on?
Page
Page of the
9.
agenda.
Page of the agenda. Well, I'm reading the pages on the Code of Conduct. So there's page 9 of the Code of Conduct. I don't know which page of the agenda that falls on, sorry. The way I'm looking at it through the HTML version doesn't give me that. Thank you, Rachel. There's so many different ways of looking at this thing.
And where exactly are you talking about on page 9?
It says members will abide by the social media protocols described in attachment A, LGNZ's Good Governance Guide, available at this website. So my question is, what happens if that website changes? It changes our Code of Conduct, does it not?
So my understanding is that that document gets updated every triennium. So next triennium, it will be a new document when the new council then adopts their new Code of Conduct. So it shouldn't change.
It shouldn't change, but we have no control over that, do we?
No.
No.
We don't.
I imagine that if it does change, we'll be fully informed about that.
But again, the Code of Conduct changes without any reference to this council because of the way that's done. So, that's...
Well, I'm sure LGNZ would give us a heads up that you need to, if such a thing does happen, I can't see why it would, but anyway, that they would say you now need to change your Code of Conduct.
So you're happy to leave it at that? Okay. Well, I mean, those are my questions. I've got some other things to say when we get to discussion, but I mean, it just seems to me that the thing is, there are some holes in here that we need to fill before we move forward. We absolutely need a Code of Conduct and we need a good one, but these questions remain in my mind.
Okay, I've got Councillor Coxhead and then Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Page 92, point number 5, under members' commitment. Make it clear when speaking publicly that statements reflect their personal view unless otherwise authorised to speak on behalf of the local authority. I just want some clarification on that, because just looking at Twitter, I see various councillors from other councils, not here. Clearly on their profile, they are a councillor expressing their personal view, but there's nothing to say this is my personal view. What's the expectation there? Because it's talking about when you're speaking, but what about when you're on the record in a social media platform, or you're on a Facebook page answering somebody else? How are the public supposed to draw the line between the two, knowing you're a councillor? Point 11, not disclose information acquired or given in confidence, makes sense, which they believe is a confidential nature. Dealing with information that relates specifically to you from in a council environment, how does that sit in there as well?
I'm just looking for a staff member who wants to comment on that possibly, or I'm happy to do it if you.
Respectfully, Mayor James, I actually think that this is a matter that our elected members need to discuss. I think my personal view is that the language is reasonably plain, but it is ultimately something. This is your code of conduct. It is not ours.
Okay. Well, my expectation is if you're commenting in a way that people might perceive as being from a councillor, then you need to make that absolutely clear. You know, if you're commenting on who might win the rugby, fine, you don't have to worry about I'm a councillor saying this, but if it's anything political, then you need to say that.
I think then point number 5 particularly is particularly vague, and we probably do need better guidance around that, because from what I've been seeing from other councils and on the radio as well, even yesterday, talking about the Wellington situation, for example, one of the councillors, yes, clearly speaking as a councillor, but it sounds very much like his personal view, and there's no disclaimer around that. So I just...
Yeah, but I'm not going to litigate what other...
No, that's what I'm saying. I just feel like we need a little bit...
councils are doing.
We need to have a little bit more of a framework around what constitutes what, in my view.
It's pretty clear. Make it clear when speaking publicly that statements reflect their personal views unless otherwise authorised to speak on behalf of the local authority. So if anything to do with council or political things like that, then you need to make it clear that it's your personal view, not the view of council.
So you have to put that in writing?
Yeah, I mean, or you can, if you like on Twitter, I don't know, you can say this is my personal account. The views do not represent the views of council. I mean, obviously in Twitter you're not going to put a disclaimer on every single post, or you wouldn't have much space to write anything else.
So on a personal account where it's not identifying you as a councillor, you're free to say whatever you like, correct?
I think you should be highly cautious about doing so, because
That's what I'm saying. This is
you can
too
never
vague.
shake off the mantle of being an elected member.
That's why I mean this is too vague.
Coming to Rachel.
Mayor James, can I just add a further implication of, in this particular space, is that if a decision hasn't yet been made by council on a particular matter and you have expressed a personal view, albeit under the mantle of your, the fact that you are an elected member, you would then be required to potentially declare an interest in the decision before council, and may inadvertently require yourself to abstain from decision making in that regard.
Okay, I have Councillor Henry and Councillor Granger.
Just further to that discussion, I think it's as our appointed, we've been appointed by our community to represent our community, and I think that we should also be very cautious while we're having our personal view. We should be very cautious about the way it's presented. And so I do think that we have a responsibility to be careful about how we speak. My question is about determining the investigation complaints and determining whether it's dealt with. Firstly, it will go through, I imagine, a code of conduct would go through a internal talking to the person and what. But if that person feels that it's, and I'm talking, say it's me, and I felt that I wasn't happy with the process, I want to make sure that I'm still entitled to have an independent representation or hearing about it. I don't want it to be left, if I'm not happy with it, I don't want it to be left internal. You know, there's this, I can't see that, it says it's going to an opportunity to go through, having an independent hearing, but is there any way that that can be taken away if that's what I would still want?
Through you, Mayor James. So in the ordinary course of a substantiated code of conduct complaint that necessitates retaining an investigator, that investigator is always independent.
Complaint if it's felt that it's dealt with in-house, and I still want it to be investigated out by a private investigator. Is that my right to still have that?
I think it's naturally what's anticipated in the flow chart that's included in the attachment, Councillor Henry.
Yeah.
So there will always be, in the event that a code of conduct complaint it requires investigation, it will be undertaken by someone independent who is skilled in that process. And there are a suite of providers across the country who are regularly retained by councils for that purpose.
I guess what the point is that who determines that it needs to be an investigation? Is that the chief executive or the mayor? And if I don't agree with that opinion, where am I left if they decide, would I want to have my day in court, basically?
So it is an independent investigator who determines whether or not the investigation, the matter, the nature of the complaint requires investigation.
Well, I think I would add, there was specific feedback from elected members that I, as the mayor, can have a first cut at dismissing stuff if it's just not an important matter.
So if I don't agree with that, and I'd like to go further, that's what I'm saying. The buck stops with the mayor or the chief executive's decision. That's what I'm asking.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
Without going to judicial review is the ultimate, but that's not.
Yes, and that is, of course, in many instances, a sledgehammer to crack a nut. But in the event that an elected member at the centre of a code of conduct complaint felt that the process was wanting or that it needed independent investigation, and so you were querying the process, the natural remedy is judicial review.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm going to go to Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have not used the council laptop for Zoom before, so am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. All right. My question, which I've just lost now, is in the substantive part of the members of the Code of Conduct, Part 1, members' commitment, point 4. And I support Councillor Joyce in his comments because it sort of plays to the same issue with his reliance on a document that we have no control over. Obviously, the Code of Conduct relies on various legal statutes that we likewise have no control over, but they don't tend to just change on a whim, whereas the website that Councillor Joyce referred to could potentially change on a whim. I mean, it shouldn't, but it could. So I totally support Councillor Joyce on that one. So my comment is on item 4. We bind ourselves to operate in a manner that recognises and respects the significance of the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And I want to know where those are set out, that we are binding ourselves to recognise and respect. Where are those principles laid out? Because they're not defined in the document itself. So again, we're referencing something that doesn't exist in the document and binding ourselves to it without being able to say what exactly they are.
I believe we have, probably in the last LTP, accepted the principles of the treaty. But I might look for further guidance and stuff on that one.
Yeah, James, I think what I would like to say in response is that I appreciate that there are a number of queries from elected members or highlighting the broadness of some of the references within the Code of Conduct. I will note that this has not been drafted by staff. It has been drafted by Local Government New Zealand, which is ordinary practice at the beginning of each triennium. And I think the responsibility lies with elected members to objectively hold themselves and each other to the standards of behaviour that you would naturally expect of an elected member. I think if we were to try to traverse every nuanced particular situation that might emerge through a triennium, we will end up with a very, very long document. So I guess what I'm saying is it's incumbent upon elected members to display the behaviour that you would expect of each other in the office you hold, and that includes in honouring Te Tiriti, which is of course included in the legislation that we are bound by, most notably the Local Government Act and the Resource Management Act. I appreciate the point that Councillor Granger has raised around the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the fact that they are a creature of the common law and that they do change over time. And for that reason alone, I think that it would be difficult to articulate in this document exactly what those principles are and what that means for how you conduct yourselves. So I guess I'm saying it's common sense.
And I think it's worth adding that a lot of the substance of a code of conduct is about using your judgment rather than a legalistic, criminal kind of bar that we're trying to set here.
But Your Worship, the point that Rachel makes is that the LGA that we are bound under talks about the Treaty of Waitangi, and the Chief Executive has left us in no uncertain terms doubt that the treaty is different from Te Tiriti. So now we've got two different things, essentially a conflict. And I have done a web search and I cannot find a web page that tells me what the principles of Te Tiriti are. There's plenty about the treaty. There's a Waitangi Tribunal paper on the principles of the treaty, which is only 3, but I cannot find anything that refers to that statement, and I find it dangerous to include that in the Code of Conduct as something I must abide by when I don't know what it is. When we're already covered by the LGA Act anyway.
Rachel.
Mayor James, I'm just going to say again through you, we're in your hands in relation to, we were hoping that this would be a reasonably straightforward opportunity to adopt your Code of Conduct, bearing in mind that you have workshopped it, and we're quite clear in terms of what the changes were that you wish to see reflected in it, and they are reflected in it. I'm not desirous of this being a discussion around the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We are in your hands in terms of what you wish to see amended or removed from the document itself.
Thank you, Rachel. I think I think it's quite disappointing that having workshopped this, we're now trying to rework some fundamental points here. Trying to do this in a formal meeting is nigh on impossible, just because the amount of detail and the breadth that this covers. There's every opportunity as there's been to comment and make changes. So what I want to suggest is that there's a couple of points that can certainly be tidied up as editorial comments, or we can formally note those if you wish. Perhaps those in making it clear that complaints involving the CEO rather than being about the CEO, and also tidying up the language around may make a non-binding decision, may or may not. And then we can adopt this Code of Conduct. If you wish to have it lie on the table, and we can workshop it all over again, and maybe by the end of the training we might adopt it. We go around in circles for a long time on this. but we've still got a few more questions. So I'll just give you a heads up as to where I'm thinking on this. But with that, I'm going to go to Councillor Sol and see if he's got any questions.
Yeah, basically, the first part is I do question, Sir, that I know under our council's policy on significance, etc., it's of small significance, but I need to state, sir, that it is of major significance to the councillors. And I just feel that we, and I've just seen through this debate going on, or sorry, discussion and questioning today, that two things. One is I thought it was going to come back to us to review the changes before it came before us in a full council meeting, but maybe I'm wrong. So I stand to be corrected on that. But to be fair, I question why LGNZ and its template is the key to everything here, when I consider that it's not, and obviously others do as well. I feel we are signing up to something. So I question as well, sir, the fact that we have a number of questions, and I just think perhaps your last statement, maybe it needs to be looked at further. No, just, saving time.
John.
I just want to thank you. I just want to, build a little bit on what Rachel said. I think I'm sort of trying to understand what's changed for us, for you. We have a current code of conduct that is very, very similar to this one in terms of process and responsibilities, risks around process and how things happen, and it has never been an issue for us. I'm sort of reflect a little bit on the, the values that we have hanging up in the cafeteria in the Mayor's office. I reflect on the fact that at the heart of this is a process of natural justice. And any process of natural justice is about applying the right process, doing the right thing, treating people fairly as things occur. And I see a high level of trust amongst councillors here, and would imagine that if and when something did occur, that it would be treated in that way, a way where people spoke to each other and resolved things in the best way, in a fair way, in a trustworthy way. And I don't think anything has actually changed between the essence of the previous document and this one, and I don't think relationships have changed to an extent that I would imagine anything would be done other than that way. So, I think, our code of conduct for staff is one page, and it's about behaviours and how we expect to treat each other. And I think probably when you go into so much detail as LGNZ has over the years, and you're trying to cover every eventuality, you get dragged into that level of detail. I don't think that's the way we would work. I think there are some editing things that we could work through. There's some things that are clearly wrong, but I think at the heart of it, it's we follow we trust each other, and we work through a natural justice process, and that's the way that things will get resolved.
Okay, I've got Councillor Wickers, Councillor Joyce, and then Councillor Murray Bench. So, Councillor Wickers.
Just a clarification and query around the process. So, looking at page 100 on the agenda with the flowchart. So the complaint comes into the Chief Executive or Mayor, and at that opportunity, it has the ability to end there. So they review the complaint and can be dismissed or carry on. The next one, it goes to initial assessor, who can also do the same thing. So going to page 94, it talks about the complaint coming directly to the, well, it comes into either the Mayor or the CEO, but then going to the initial assessor without the ability of the, so this is really just clarifying. I understand the reason for the initial one, but if that's the case, it probably needs to go in to the wording in that there.
So just a little bit of context here, because I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
The feedback from our workshop was we wanted that initial step where where we
understand.
can dismiss it straight away. We also had feedback, we wanted a flow chart, and that was created that reflected that.
Yep.
Back engineering all that into the text could perhaps be slightly clarified. I think it works as a text, but it could possibly be clarified.
Cool, that's good. And then the second one was the appointing of the initial assessor. Because this is actually a new part that's different from the old one, is that initial assessor person. So just sort of understanding how that would work.
Well, I would seek advice from staff on, I think it's John's role actually to seek advice on who to appoint as initial assessor.
It's good practice to have a pre-qualified list, if you like, which we should do, so that it takes away any inference of any bias in any way. I think yeah, it always personally, I would always look for the most appropriate person, and then get clarity, get confirmation from the complainant, respondent, if those are the right terms, that they're happy with that particular appointment, as you would with them with the terms of reference as well for that process. Look, to be honest, if this is coming to me as chief executive and it involves two councillors, I'm not going to want to bar a bit. So my inclination, I don't want to get in the middle of that. So my inclination would be to always use an independent assessor.
We'll add, Councillor Wickers, that actually the process for selecting the initial assessor, thank you, Greer, for pointing this in the right direction, is under section 3.2 on page 96. So it does explain the process there and who might be an initial assessor. Okay, Councillor Joyce.
I don't want a second bite of the cherry. I just wanted to point to that reference I couldn't find before.
Sorry, can you speak up, please?
Sorry, I didn't want a second bite of the cherry. I just wanted to point to that reference I couldn't find before. It's on page 11, who can make a complaint. And it says, if the complaint is about the chief executive, the deputy chief executive may receive the complaint. So if that's not the case, then it needs to be struck. Because it's certainly not talking about the CEO being involved. It's talking about a complaint about the CEO. So page 11 or page 94 on the agenda, I did go back and have a look to match the numbers up, but just so you've got a proper reference to what I was referring to.
I think we're talking about involved rather than about.
Well, that one talks about. It's definitely page 11 or 94 on the agenda, who can make a complaint section, definitely talks about making a complaint about the CEO. So, yeah, I'm not trying to get a second bite at it. I'm just saying that's the page reference I failed to
I agree. The wording could be, you can read that in a couple of different ways, but I agree the wording could be tightened up on that. Absolutely. We can change it to involve. Okay, Councillor Murray-Bench.
As you are aware, Mr. Mayor, I really can't participate in this debate this morning, and that is a great concern to me. And with the questions that have been raised so far.
Sorry, Councillor Murray-Bench, you are able to fully participate in this debate. I don't understand why you.
Sorry?
You are able to participate in this debate.
I would prefer to see it workshopped again, to be honest. And I think there's more work to be done before we formally adopt this. It is our reputations that are on the line and our relationship with the community. And I think there is more work to be done. And I'm most uncomfortable with what we've got before us this morning.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Crawford. Oh, and sorry, Councillor Granger, is that still up or is that a new question? New question for you?
It's a new one.
Okay. So Councillor Crawford, then Councillor Granger.
Thank you. This depends on whether we want to workshop it anymore. But I just want to go back to what Tracy was saying, just a bit of clarification about when we can and not speak. Because a lot of us are in community groups and which have public forums to it, and often we're in there with our hat on as a councillor. So I guess in our code of conduct, because, some of us could be breaching our code of conduct if we're not authorised to say some things and yet we're reflecting what's happening in council. So to me, I guess it's just a bit of clarification about when we use the word authorise to speak, when we're speaking publicly, you know, what does that actually mean? Are we able to reflect what is in the public domain anyway, and that people could read it anyway, and we'll reflect in it, and not breaching confidentiality or something hasn't been decided yet? Is that what that means? Or every time because the thing I've learned in this role is that really you never take off your councillor's hat, right? And so we got that upon us all the time. People see us that. So I guess, yeah, I just wanted some clarification what that actually means to what we actually can say as a council, and or do we have to keep saying this is my personal view?
I think the point I would like to make, Councillor Crawford, is that clarification will come through a discussion amongst us, not through rewording that point. Because, you know, we're not going to induce a whole detailed explanation of who can say what and when, and you just get completely messy for a code of conduct. But if we want to have a better understanding of when that might apply, and I'm conscious that me trying to do it on the fly now is probably not the best way to do it.
So I guess the question I'm asking, and a little bit maybe what Margaret's saying, whether we might need to do some more work on this or we pass it.
But I don't. This is, my point is, I don't think we need to have that discussion before we adopt the code of conduct, because the wording in there, I don't think would change. Our understanding and knowledge might have to increase, but it's not going to change the code of conduct itself. That's my view. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not really a question, more an observation about some wording under the bullying, harassment and discrimination, which I'm working on tiny screens, I think is on page 8 of the code. It's just really badly written. The rules of English say that if you've got a colon, you should be able to leave out the bits in between, and it makes sense. But as it reads, it says it may be a regular pattern, which is fine, or a one-off incident, and then it may be occur face-to-face, sort of doesn't work, or it may be happen in the workplace, doesn't work. And also, if you leave that whole paragraph out, you get it may be, may not always be. So it's just really, really bad and needs fixing in the minor editorial changes.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Granger. I agree that could probably be tidied up under the minor editorial changes. Right, with any further questions? There being none, I would like to seek a mover and seconder for recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 5, noting that there is some desire for other outcomes. So do I have a mover and seconder for those 1, 2, 3 and 5 to adopt? And if anyone wants to come in and suggest something else, they're welcome to do so. Councillor Daly.
Could I just ask if, are we going to have circulate the minor editorial changes before they're made?
Well, it's not normally how we do it. The point of minor editorial changes is that they don't change the meaning of anything.
I mean, we've had a discussion and there's been some explanations and clarifications, but it seems to me like there's still some interest in maybe discussing a little bit further on some of these points as per Alan.
So would you like to move that it lies on the table? Is that what you're saying?
I'd be happy to move that if there was a seconder.
Seconder, Councillor Joyce. Debate.
I'll just retain a right of reply.
Courtney? Councillor Joyce.
So the key thing here is this is entrenched. If we pass this today, it takes 75% to change it again. So the changes that we're talking about are not minor editorial changes. They do change the meaning of the document. And they're quite logical changes. Taking out the CEO, that's an error, but that changes the meaning of the document. Putting in an ability to do a non-binding recommendation, that changes the meaning of the document. They're not covered by minor editorial changes.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you there? there was an opportunity to make those exchanges explicit. Okay, we can make those exchanges
but-
explicit, and then grammatical errors and all that stuff can be
Oh,
taken
look,
as-
there's compliment and compliment done wrong there as well,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wasn't going to raise that. But yeah, I think there are more substantive issues as well. I don't agree with the provision on page 8 about the idea that every time we speak, we have to make it clear we're speaking for ourselves. I think, I would turn that around and I would say that, if you should not purport to speak for the council when you speak publicly, which is a completely different onus. There's so many edits needed in this thing. That's why, I don't think it's a good idea to try and do recommendations and reword it today. I think everybody agrees that. I am concerned about the LGNZ link. They can change that. Yeah. Saying they don't normally do so is not a very good, robust argument. Predetermination is an important issue. It was covered by a whole section in the old code. That section is gone. One of the parts that's dear to my heart on that was that if you campaign on a particular issue, the public should be entitled to see you follow through on your campaign promise. The way it's written now, I could actually, if I make a statement on the campaign trail, it could be used against me. And I'm not saying people would, and I take John's point completely that we've got to work on an element of trust, but the whole predetermination thing's just been left out. It was in the previous code. Alan's right. At the last workshop, we went through this and we took a bit of time on it, and we were told it would come back to a future workshop, and then we see it in an agenda. So the process has.
It was never going to come back to a future workshop,
Well,
sorry.
I'm sorry, but
There was only 2 comments, and they're pretty minor.
My memory is with Alan. Okay, so I respectfully disagree. We were told this would come back to a future workshop, is my recollection. So I don't think this thing is ready for the big time yet. I take Rachel's point that this is about holding ourselves and each other to a code of conduct. But actually, the way it's written now, it's quite highly likely that nothing comes back here. So fundamentally, like Parliament, Parliament's Privileges Committee is a committee of Parliament. It makes the decisions. The way this is written, we're basically delegating everything away from the council table. And my personal belief is that the council table is the right place to bring back the findings from the independent investigation. It should be independent, and then the council table should form judgment on whether they accept that recommendation. I don't agree with binding recommendations. It's not how Parliament works. It's not necessary. As Rachel quite rightly said, we hold ourselves. But this process is built towards not holding ourselves to account. It's about delegating it away. And we don't even get to decide under this how and when information is released. It's delegated to the CEO. And I take John's point. When these things happen, I agree with you, John. I wouldn't want to be near this as CEO either. It's a very difficult situation to be in. So I think council should take ownership of this, and we do need to make some changes. We do need a good code of conduct. We've pointed some problems in here. It doesn't mean to say the whole document's faulty. There's some really good stuff in here as well, but I do think we need to have one more go around in a more relaxed environment rather than trying to move 20 formal amendments today, which, it was the other option, which is why I support laying it on the table.
I'm going to take a moment. Hang on. So I'm just checking a point of order here that I'd like to check. Okay. According to Standing Order 25.1, procedural motions to lie on the table must be put immediately. Sorry. Roughly missed that one. So with that, I would have to put the motion. It's been moved by Councillor Daly and Councillor Joyce that the code of conduct lies on the table, and we'll have a workshop on it, no doubt, at some point. So all those in favour, please say aye. Actually,
Aye.
I think I'd better raise your hands on this one. Okay, so please raise your hands if you're in favour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 7, 8. Okay, in which case that is carried. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. This is
Okay.
on.
Division, please.
Okay, so Councillor Thwaites has called a division. Please raise your hands if you voting to have it lie on the table. We have Councillor Coxhead, Henry, Grant, Daly, Granger, Sol, Joyce, Murray-Benge and Thwaites. Sorry, not Thwaites, sorry, not Thwaites. Wickers, goodness. Okay, and those against? So Denyer, Thwaites and Scrimger and Crawford. Hope that adds up to 12. Okay, anyway, that is carried. Right, we can move on. Page 102, item 11.3, Tourism Bay of Plenty Annual Report and Letter of Expectation. And for this we have Jodie Rickard, and we have some guests from Tourism Bay of Plenty with us as well.
Morena, Your Worship, elected members. The next item on the agenda is Tourism Bay of Plenty's annual report for the year 2022, ending 30th of June 2023, and also looking at the key themes that we want to present to Tourism Bay of Plenty for our letter of expectation for the next statement of intent for the next financial year, starting 1 July 2024. So I'm just going to introduce Oscar and his team. We've got Oscar, Claire Swallow, who is I'll get them to introduce themselves and then they can speak to the report. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou nā kauhin nehera me ki tātou katoa. Oscar Nathan, GM at Tourism Bay of Plenty. Good morning.
Kia ora tātou everyone. My name is Claire Swallow and I am one of the trustees on the board of Tourism Bay of Plenty. Currently chair the People and Culture Committee as well.
Kia ora, my name is Richard Fair. I'm Head of Strategy and Insights at Tourism Bay of Plenty.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to present the report. I'm conscious that everyone has a copy of it. You've read through it. Probably just some of the highlights to briefly sort of bring to your attention. I suppose the main one is to go to the scorecard of the KPIs. Just to remind councillors, that was about 30 something when I first started, so we managed to get that down to 10 so that we can actually just get some sort of some focus. We achieved eight of those targets. The two that we somewhat didn't achieve, well, 8.5. We didn't achieve a Tauranga City Council social wellbeing score, so we did achieve the Western Bay one. So thank you very much. So the community is happy with what we're doing. Not so happy with our Tauranga City Council, but that score was just a little bit lower than the 70% at 64. And the other one was, to be honest, we probably shot ourselves in the foot with Flavours of Plenty. We set a target of 80% of tickets sold. Conscious that the first year we opened Flavours of Plenty, we did so against the tide COVID, everything else, over 4 days. Second year, we extended it to 10 days, just under $500,000 worth of revenue, but we put the mark of measurement against the number of tickets sold. And in the second year, we included a lot more of those bigger events. So the metrics of the figures sold. So the event grew massively. We just probably shot ourselves in the foot on the metric. But outside of that, I suppose in fairness, the flavours has been really well. We had a board meeting of Tourism Bay of Plenty yesterday, and it is very clear that it's a synonymous event, not just an event, a platform across the region that everyone is starting to see where they fit into it. So it's not just about profiling an event for a festival's sake, but it's also profiling our horticultural provenance, both from sort of growers, providers, right through to suppliers and the networks that wrap around that. Probably just the other point of mention, and then I'm happy to hand over to Claire is actually our Deputy Chair-elect. So once we leave and you nominate her or approve it, then she becomes the Deputy Chair. So yeah, the other thing I think is worth mentioning is a lot of the effort's been doing about the green room. That's been going really well. That's been getting operators involved around right across the Western Bay. And the other point is the second year or the return of cruise, which has been significant. So last year with cruise, the intention was around 103. I think 80 something came in the end due to that. If you remember last summer, the weather was quite inclement. So essentially what happens with cruise, there's about 14 ports through the country that cruise ships tend to call in on. When the weather's inclement, they just bump that port and move to the next one. So unders and overs, we ended up with about 80 odd. Coming season, we're looking at about 100 and 110. So that's growing really well. And again, the thing to remember here, which is a narrative that would be great if we can communicate that out to the wider community, is whilst it may well have been true back in 2017, 18, 19, even before COVID, that up to 60% of cruise passengers used to disembark at Tauranga Port and jump onto a coach and either head to Rotorua or to Hobbiton. That is no longer the case. We got a bite of it last season. We're definitely getting a bigger bite of it this season, whereby Hobbiton have made it very clear they're not taking any cruise ship passengers at all. So that's a significant opportunity for the Coastal Bay of Plenty. And Rotorua has also reduced the numbers of cruise ship passengers it's taking. So you have to be careful what you wish for. So all of a sudden we've got more people ready to be here. We just need to catch up on developing the product and experiences for them to do and to transport them around. So that's our challenge. Anything more?
No, there's not much to add. I think, other than thank you for your contribution. You know, the work that our team does wouldn't be possible without not only your financial contribution, but I think the relationship that's been built with the team and the ongoing work that's coming. So, yeah, we look forward to the coming year and working alongside you again.
Thank you. Were there any questions on the report or the annual report? Councillor Joyce.
Sorry, typical me, I dive to the numbers. Accumulated funds are up 67%. You've now got $500,000 sitting in investments. What's the plan for that? Because obviously that's not a sustainable trajectory, particularly when the contributing councils are facing such tough times.
Great point. So the reserves are actually there in terms of, so we're reducing it. We've got a sinking lid on our cash reserves. As you're aware, or just as a reminder, we're down this, from the start of this year, July 1, we've had 600,000 reduced from our bottom line. So the reason that, so that's almost like a buffer operating reserve, but it's, we did have a PowerPoint to present, but we weren't able to present it, but it was very clear to show you that it's a sinking lid cash reserve. So whilst it looks buffered up, it's actually about sort of seeing us through so that we can keep doing what we tried to do last week, is to use the IP and talent within the team to come and hunt and find new projects to deliver and do. So it's very much a sinking lid. The other thing in there is it's not all our cash reserves, it's also cash in advance in terms of some of the last of the MB funding. and the region, what was called the Regional Events Fund. When the government closed the borders, they took international visitor numbers, proportioned that to regions across the country, about 31 of us, and allowed us to enable key events. So the last of that funding is in that portion.
Councillor Vickers and then Councillor Joyce. Sorry, Councillor Vickers and then Councillor Henry and then Councillor Daly.
Yeah, thank you for coming in the other week and presenting and sort of showing the spotlights that's going on Waihi Beach and Makitu. It was good to see. We are aware that the views in Makitu, perhaps not all of them have been represented in that. So just understanding what you will be doing and out there to perhaps get some wider feedback before sort of things progress.
We've probably got an A and a B plan depending on where it goes. So as committed last week, I am quite keen to, I'm happy to go and workshop and meet the community and have that conversation so we get a wider representation around. I completely respect Makitu's sort of wanting to hold on to what it has. At the same time, I'm not sort of siloed that that's the only view. So the A and B plan is we can either work with that and you know, talk up the cultural importance of Makitu from a Te Aroha waka landing position and maybe do things within the community that the occasional visitor can also be informed about. So we could do that as an A plan if that's where it stands. We've also got a network of digital kiosks that I mentioned that we're establishing. So the first one's due to go up outside the Mount Hot Pools prior to the summer. And then there's about 5 that will go across TCC's sort of network, and very much as a test case for what we think would work in terms of a interactive, visual way of telling that story that's not intrusive on the community as well. So that could be the A plan. The B plan is, depending on what happens from the workshop, we'd like to pursue some opportunities with some of the active operators in the community. But again, the whole purpose of doing those reports was to try to reflect what the community wants. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Okay, interesting your indication about the two councils' satisfaction, and I would have to say that it's sad that Tauranga City have chosen to not give you as high a rating, because I think one of the initiatives in that report was something that I've really missed with Tauranga, was the link between Mount Maunganui and Tauranga with the ferry. And whilst it may be not cost effective in the early initiative, it's worth that investment, because that's one short way of the cruise ship being able to see some of the offers on our water and be able to see up the upper regions and all that sort of stuff. So they get a quick glimpse of that. So continue that work, because I've been wanting to go on one of those trips again. My children really enjoyed them when they were young. So going on, and it's really noticeable, the change with Tourism Bay of Plenty out in our regions. I've mentioned them when you came in last, the Green Room, such an excellent initiative, and when you're answering me, we're wondering whether that is actually transferring through to our passengers that are coming in, because I mean, I think that we in New Zealand really miss the boat. We could be doing a lot more to promote we're an island, you know, we can easily be, something that is an example for the rest of the world and how to manage our resources and our living. But, you know, it all comes down to the dollar. So what I'm, and the initiatives that you were saying, we talked before about when you came in and talking about the local market and our cafes and all that sort of stuff, really, you know, are not up to.
Councillor Henry, is
What I'm asking
here?
is that you're talking about moving into our regions, and it's the same thing what I was bringing about for the local market. The capacity building for those communities to optimise those opportunities. It's a big job. What can we do? What can we do to encourage? What can you do to encourage them to be ready for that market?
I get where the question is there. So from the capacity building and us working in reach, so the Green Room's been delivering some really good outcomes. It's been getting people to understand the benefit of being more sustainable and environmentally friendly, but also the benefits, both environmental, social and economic, on their business. Where I think, respectfully, where Western Bay could really support us, you know, and it does come down to sort of funding and programs, but I'm hoping you're getting the sense that the board's worked very hard to drive me, and I've in turn been working with the team to shape them to really be an agency that wants to deliver. You won't see us furnishing strategies or anything like that, sort of over the papers. It's more a case of what can we deliver on the ground, and that's what we're quite keen to. Yeah, I suppose the other thing, just the last part of your comment there, when it comes to the cafes and such, that's where platforms like Flavours of Plenty are really important, because those are and particularly when it comes to Waihi Beach, we talked about this last week. Waihi Beach is very seasonal, and a lot of things sort of find it a struggle in the low season. So if we can create a really good framework around Flavours of Plenty, not to think of it as an event, but think of it as a platform that connects everybody, then there's some sustainable bites that can happen throughout the year. The other opportunity now we have as a country is we'll be into our third Matariki next year, which is also an opportunity to celebrate, and that's right in that dearth of that June-July period as well. So it gives us another opportunity.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Councillor Daly.
Yeah, thanks, Oscar, for coming in again. Just following up on Andy's comments in terms of the social wellbeing, do you have a breakdown in the percentage of residents who agree that tourism has a positive impact on the community across the district, within pockets of the district?
Good question. And just to clarify, so that metric is a resident satisfaction survey. It's not necessarily the council resident satisfaction survey, but or satisfaction level. The answer to your question, we're working on it. So this probably gives Richard a chance to have a chat. So the reason Richard's quiet is he's only started 2 months ago. This is a report based on 12 months ago. But this has opened the door for him to say something, because we've actually started looking at that resident satisfaction survey to look under the hood as to why is it like that. So Rich, have you got anything there?
Yes, I can add a few comments to that. So yeah, as Oscar said, we're looking both at the methodology, how the survey is designed. In terms of granularity, we probably don't get enough granularity in terms of the pockets that you're talking about. It's something that we're keen to look at. Tourism means different things to different people when you talk about sentiment as well, you know, and it's trying to get an understanding of what that means for residents as well.
And if I can ask another question. And the reason I asked that one was because of Andy's comment about Makatū and the fact we've done that big survey, but it seems that might have a clear indication from that wellbeing survey about Makatū. But and I'm referring back to our discussion we had at the Community Committee last week, and the comments were made about maybe the possibility of extending the corridor like Karikari, Waihi Beach and Te Puke, Makatū, Te Puke, and I was going to signal an amendment to the recommendation that we've got in our recommendations.
Councillor Daly, this isn't the time to be moving amendments.
No, but my question is, I know you probably don't have a budget, or my question is, would it be, and we're talking about 24, 25 expectations, so I'm wondering if it's possible to maybe extend your surveys that you've done to include the Karikari Makatū corridor and Karikari Waihi Beach Makatū Te Puke corridor, to pull in those opportunities for the two regions to coalesce and offer a broader offering than just what's available in Makatū, what's available in Waihi Beach.
I think straight to the quick, the reason that cash reserve was up in the MB funding, so those two studies that we did do didn't come out of your BAU. They came out of additional funding that we secured and conversation we had literally with Western Bay staff and others about where do we think respectfully, where do we think there's low-hanging fruit and other programs of opportunities. So it's not a no, it's really probably a push to say if you can find a way of giving us some funding to actually do that, then we will we've got the templates, we know what to do. But I also want to clarify, so that's the first answer. The second is, it's not that we're not doing anything in those particular communities either. So we've got quite a lot of work going on with Graham Crossman, connecting in Te Puke, and a lot of the tours that are coming off the cruise ships. We're networking in with various operators in Te Puke and Maketu and a whole bunch of other things. So there is work there. And I'm also aware of some of the things, I haven't caught up with them lately, that Mark was up to with Economic Te Puke or whatever the group's called that he's running. Is it Mark? Te Puke? Yeah. So it's not that we're close to those. It's really about just as we're doing what we can with the funding that we've got. So to answer your question, we'd be happy to do the same things again with templates, but we're probably just going to need some resource to help us do that. Yeah.
And
Councillor Dowd, I think you've had a fair bite of the cherry. Is that a follow-on?
a very quick one. The 5 kiosks that you've planning to set up with the digital screens, is there a possibility to maybe set up one in the Western Bay somewhere?
Oh, absolutely. So again, cards on the table. I'm very much using the initial 5 from TCC as the test case for that network. The way that that's worked at the moment is TCC have stepped up respectfully to support us with a role dedicated underneath one of my existing staff to deploy a lot of the digital content and such so we centralise the content of the kiosk and we push out to kiosk 1, 5, 6, 7, whatever it might be. The intention is to get that network up and running this summer, and then ideally, as we prove that, we iron out all the kinks and everything else, then we'd be able to come back to you and say, maybe in your budget from July 1 next year, then you could look at sort of those kiosks. And the way that's worked is we've pretty much said we've got the resource to deploy the content. Each kiosk in its location has been purchased by the location themselves. So the Bay Venues has purchased the ones for the Mount Hot Pools and such, and parts of council have purchased other parts for their Manuataki project and so forth. So, but the intention's absolutely there to do that, and that might be one of the solutions for Maki too. Yeah.
Thank you, Oscar. Next we have Councillor Murray Benge.
We've just had an election and the army stayed in its barracks. And I've just come back from the Middle East, and the horror there, tourism has just been turned upside down, and you can't help but think of the people who are really suffering now because it's just been destroyed. And if you watch the hordes of people that flow across hills going to functions, it's formidable. But so we're in our infancy really here at the bottom of our world. But you mentioned here you've got the tech park and the strategic values of the tech park and all the organisations that are out there. How will you actually make sure that the cruise ships and the locals can actually get there? And by the way, there's nothing so good as fish and chips at Maketu.
Right there. Yeah, so again, in terms of the tech park, I've been engaged there with, I think it was Cheryl that was helping you with the study on tech park. I did the online survey on behalf of the organisation as well. So we've had our first round of consultation on the revised strategy. I've made it very clear the number one proposition that needs to change for the tech park, if you really want to take it 2.0, is you need to move it from a user park to a visitor park, or include a visitor park element to it. At the moment, it's users. It's about 14 sub-associations of various interests that use the park. But you have Heidi and Fritz driving past it every day. They wouldn't know to turn in to do anything because it's not positioned in that way. So I think that's probably from our strategic feedback and our ability to network that's where we'd push the immediate options. product development and such, obviously would come out of other budgets, but the other thing that would be a great addition, if you are considering the findings of the tech park, would be something around an outfitter store and a cafe, something that actually centralizes, allows people, you've got great toilets there, it's right in the middle of that drive. It would be great to be able to pull in, have a good coffee, for people to centralize themselves. If you had an outfitter store that could work with the 14 associations and get a bit of kit from each one, then they could actually make a bit of revenue off the side of it by hiring those things, as long as health and safety was all ticked off. So I think it's just underutilized at the moment.
Have you got the skills to actually initiate a joint venture on it?
Yep, we've got I think we've definitely got the skills. Time and capacity is a different thing, not us directly, but we could. I've done that with previous projects before, and some of my team have definitely, where we'll identify the opportunity, go out and find the right JV or operator or partner them up, and get those things going. I think the proposition around the cafe and everything else, there's a lot of options there. I suppose it would just come down to if there's any change in the operational management or how it works.
Thank you, Councillor Murray-Bench. Next up, I have Councillor Sol up on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Very briefly, thanks very much. That report was superb. To be honest, I feel quite validated. It relatively reflected what I found out a few years back. It's just had a few more things added. My question really, well, actually before that, what I love is the way that you're now trying to make the cake in the Bay of Plenty bigger. And I do believe that's what you're trying to do. It might be in little ways, little bites or little pieces, but the cake's getting bigger. Now, for me, the question is, what is your relationship with our neighbours again back in the Waikato, in particular Hauraki District, Waihi? Because I believe Waihi Beach still needs more assistance to get local tourism in. Are there ways that are you developing stronger connections? Like, these kiosks sound great. Maybe there's ways we can do it. And also to capitalise on the fact at present that people going to the Coromandel and will be still for the next 5 months are passing through Waihi. So what are your connections? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yes, we are. So we're working quite heavily there with, we have an ongoing relationship with Waihi Promotions. We've been working, Waihi's in an interesting place. Obviously, it's the fringe of your border. It's at the fringe of their border. Some funding trusts have them included. Some funding trusts don't have them included. The electoral boundary is a whole different story. So I think it's very much one of the things that we're trying to work with Waihi Beach is to get the proposition very clear so that we can work with them on communicating that to particularly Auckland. It makes complete sense from a domestic market perspective. And there are clusters happening in Auckland, I think, in Waihi Beach. Last week when I spoke, someone mentioned they hadn't heard me mention Athenry at all or whatever. But to be clear, we're doing quite a bit of work with Athenry, collectivising product. I think you've got, he goes by the quasi-mayor of Waihi Beach, Mr. Kennedy. We're doing quite a lot of work with him as well. And one of the things we haven't been able to show you, but it's sort of included in one of the images in this report, is we've quite strongly been doing quite a lot of trade and product development, taking operators up to Auckland and getting them in front of people so that people can see what is available there. So again, we just need more product. Yeah.
Thank you. Last person I've got is Councillor Coxhead.
Thank you. Yeah, do appreciate the work you're doing. Just a couple of questions and a comment, really. The flavours of plenty are really pleased to see that you're looking at beefing that up, if you'll pardon the pun. Just coming from Wellington and how popular Wellington on a plate became, and it became huge. So would love to see that happen here. We've got every opportunity to do that in a better climate, obviously. Interested to know what's happened with Tarnish, Frocks and Divas. It's sort of like our wow, if you like. and would be, I imagine, a draw card if it was promoted appropriately around the country. My questions are, going back to the cruise ships, and thank you, I did come to your cruise ship presentation the other day, so I found that really helpful. So what do people do in Tauranga, the 60% more people that are staying in the area now, and really what are we missing? I mean, I have my own views, but I'm interested in yours. And what else did I write here? How much is the chaos in our city, Tauranga City, how much is that impacting our image and well, actually business going there? I mean, I see it being a bit of a detriment, to be honest, but I'm sure you'd probably agree with that. So just interested in your thoughts on those points.
Fox and Divas, I could check on that. Yeah, I think the same. It is such a great event, and COVID's obviously put a pause in there. So I've got a couple of people that I can go and reach out to and see where that's happening, but obviously it's a bit of an army of an event. So I'd take it it's just mobilising that army that's probably just sort of quietened down over the last couple of years, but definitely I can have a look at that. In terms of cruise, our general understanding with a lot of the people that stay in the bay, up to 50% of them are in and around that Mount area. It is definitely a direct beneficiary of the Mount Main Street strip in terms of shopping and everything else works there. But just to point out too, it works well not just because of its proximity, but it is also quite boutique. And there is that element that works quite well. It's not just your standard sort of corner dairy shops or anything else. So that works quite well from a cruise passenger perspective. There are also quite a few, as any of my cruise team will tell you, there's quite a few operators that daytime travel sightseeing permits that operate off the port, and they are bringing people out to the Western Bay and other areas as well. Unfortunately, this season we won't have one of the councillors mentioned the ferry, we won't have the ferry operating this season because last season we managed to, this season it's actually on dry dock and it's being looked at, but there's a bigger study going on, as I understand it, with Bay of Plenty Regional Council and others to revisit the proposition of potentially an entity like a Fuller's or someone looking at a proper ferry service. The region deserves it, the population deserves it, and being on the water just makes complete sense, getting people off the roads. So that's happening there. The CBD, I'll just stick to the line that I believe in, is it's a saying for a reason, there's short-term pain for long-term gain. And that's exactly what's happening. And I think if it wasn't being done at the moment, then people would be complaining even more later on. So I do know, with all due respect to TCC, they're working as hard as they can to, you rob Peter, you're trying to pay Paul over here to get that through. But in 3 years' time, the proposition for the district is going to be so much stronger.
Well, thank you, Oscar. I think we've reached the end of the questions. So we have 4 recommendations in front of us. So I'll look for a mover and seconder for those, please. Councillor Murray-Benge, Councillor Henry. Are there any debates on that? Councillor Murray-Benge.
Just happy to speak to it. I compliment the team for how far you've come and how far you've got to go. But I'd also like to thank Jodie Rickard, because she's working strategically with you, and I think that's a great strength for our council and for your tourism bay. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Councillor Daly.
Yes, as I signalled earlier, I would like to make an amendment, if possible, to 4E, along the lines of support for the development of local tourism opportunities in Makatu-Te Puke and Katikati-Waihi Beach. And I think that's a standalone, well, if I get a seconder first.
Okay, so just get this straight. So the original motion was proposed by Councillor Murray-Benge and seconded by Councillor Henry. You have moved an amendment to change 4E to include not just Makatu and Waihi Beach, but Te Puke and Katikati as well. Okay? Is there a seconder for that amendment? No, excuse me, there's a seconder for that. I've got. Well, are you supportive? Yes. Is Councillor Henry supportive? Sorry, is that a yes? Yeah. Yes, okay. Okay, so if that's the will of the room, looking around here at this point, so we have recommendations 1 to 4 with the changed E, 4E. So we'll debate on that. So, okay, Councillor Daly.
Well, I support all the recommendations, but in regard to the amendment, I believe it can stand there without funding, because even if these recommendations are based on a funding allocation, this is for the 24-25 year, and there may be opportunities for funding that TBOT may not have the funding presently to extend the study that's already been done, but there may be opportunities to inject additional funding from whatever source that may be, and we may be surprised where that funding comes from, but generally I think it's a good initiative, and it was communicated quite clearly by John Clement, Chairman of the Katikati Community Board at the Community Committee last week, and I supported him in that at the other end of the district. So I recommend these recommendations.
I'm just going to, well, okay, I was going to ask a question, but Jodie, if you want to comment.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Just in relation to the letter of expectation and how that then builds into the statement of intent, the things that Western Bay Plenty District Council puts into the letter of expectation are then the things that we are expecting Tourism Bay of Plenty to deliver on behalf of our communities. So alongside that, we will be coming back to you through that long-term plan to understand what the funding implications of that are. Those amendments, therefore, will be explored further through the long-term plan process when you're looking at your issues and options papers around these matters.
I think that touches on the point I was going to make, was that if we, instead of focusing on Makatū and Waihi Beach, we focus on all 4 of our main towns, how much focus is there actually? It's more like do everything everywhere all at once. So I do have concern there, but is that, I don't know if that can be worked through, and I guess that's an LTP decision for later. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I think that's a discussion for, I can see that the elected members, well, the amendment has been supported. If it is moved, then I'll have discussions with Oscar and his team around what that might look like, and then we can bring that back to you through the LTP with issues and options papers.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, I had Councillor Henry next.
That was where why I supported it, was because it's something that we've talked about. I also wanted to acknowledge that it's something that is outside the contract, more work. And so to acknowledge it in there as an amendment to that is to put it on the table, which is what Jodie's just acknowledged, but full realisation that we need to look at what. So some idea of where, a guide from you to Jodie, what we could be looking at to draw up and then support. So without some sort of indication, we can't put the money to it. That's the extent of it, in my mind.
Councillor Murray-Bench. So you are indicating you want to write a reply, so we'll leave that to the end. Okay, Councillor Wickers.
You're just wanting to note that we're supporting tourism opportunities in Makatū, that is canvassed widely, that we just don't plough ahead. I think you understand.
I heard you the first time, so definitely, and I'm a glass half full person anyway, so.
Okay, do we have any other speakers for or against this? Councillor Crawford.
Just in relation to the amendments, I know you've done some work already, engagement at Waihi Beach and Makatū. Does this, if we accept this amendment, does this put more work and need more funding to work
Yeah,
on that.
absolutely. So I think the thing, again, we would have shown you in terms of the PowerPoint we had presented, but, and I'm not trying to be sort of ungrateful or anything like that at all, and hopefully you're getting a feel that we're quite a genuine team. But outside of the things that go into letters of expectation, what generally read the mood of the year or the inclinations of what you would like, as an organisation, we have a very solid BAU plan that we deliver on your behalf every year, which keeps us in campaigns with Tourism New Zealand and domestic stuff and hosts media and runs all those sorts of things. So whilst we managed through the MB funding to get the deep dive on Maketu and Waihi Beach, we will require additional funding, but I'm absolutely comfortable to work with Jodie and to come back and present a workshop with you if you want to sort of test and measure on the value of those dollars. But but the actual reality is we've got a good team, but we're going to need more funding to do what we need to do.
Okay, so I think we're back to Councillor Murray Benj and her right of reply.
Right, I agree with Maketu and Waihi Beach, and I would think that Jodie, you'd be speaking to Graham Crossman to see how far he can extend his operation and how many, like to Puki Edge, how far they can do the work on the ground so that it doesn't interfere with tourism's budget or their work. As for Katikati, I think there's some groundwork to be done there, and I appreciated the fact that you talked about the long-term plan and where it would fit into that. So it's not something that you have to do now, Oscar, and your team. It's just the way forward. And I think we've got to keep looking forward because the potential is there for so much income to be earned for our region, and it's really important that we are positive and energetic about what we want. So, but thank you for the work that you do. You're actually very good.
Thank you, Councillor Murray Benj. So with that, there are four recommendations there, and I'll read out 4E, the amended 4E again. Support for the development of local tourism opportunities in Maketu, Waihi Beach, Katikati and Te Puke. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Tourism Mayor Plenty. Thank you, Oscar.
And final comment. Last week, I was a bit guilty of mailing you Western Bay paraphernalia in terms of our cycleways. So we brought these ones today. So these are the latest flavours of plenty, but not to distract you from your agenda and everything else. But if you do each get a copy and read these, you'll see that this is what Flavours of Plenty is about. It's not about an event. It's about a platform that connects, and the event's one of the things that pops off it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So moving on now to item 11.4, Waikato Local Authority Shared Services Limited CoLab Annual Report, page 138. So we have Adele and Azura. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the Mayor. We will take this report as read today. CoLab, we became a member of CoLab just over a year ago, and have found their services and their offerings and the opportunities to get involved with shared services well worthwhile. And if there's any questions, we can certainly redirect them back through to CoLab as required.
Any questions on receiving the annual report? There being none, I look for a mover and a seconder on those two recommendations, please. Councillor Henry and Councillor Sol. Put the motion. Oh, so is there any debate? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And the next one is the page 196, the New Zealand Local Government Funding Agency Limited Annual Report. Which, same people up front for this one. So if there's anything you want to say on that, Adele.
Through the Mayor again, I think we'll just take this report as read. We are a shareholding council in the Local Government Funding Agency, so we're quite heavily involved with the overarching and overseeing of the entity itself. And from our perspective, it's going extremely well. They've just hit a $20 billion borrowing over the last, well, the total borrowings now hit $20 billion as a group. So it's a very large borrowing entity, second biggest in the country. So thank you.
Right, any questions? Councillor Joyce.
Just checking, we're a shareholder. Do we have any liability if someone doesn't pay their bills?
Through the Mayor, yes, we're surrounded in covenants in terms of what we can and can't do as a member of LGFA, which includes how much we can actually borrow and what our debt to borrowing ratio is, sorry, debt to revenue ratios are.
I was more worried about other people's borrowing if they go belly up. I mean, not that the council can really go belly up, but you know, they could default. Does that in any way come back onto the shareholders?
Yes, it can.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Mowbenge.
Where would we be if we didn't have this organisation? How would we fund ourselves? Because this was a huge step forward.
Through the Mayor, we would probably be doing the conventional borrowings or looking at potentially other ways of seeking those funds. This was set up to provide the most cost-efficient and effective way of getting funds to council at the best possible rate. So it certainly does its job well.
I think it's worth mentioning it would be considerably more expensive. I'll also perhaps ask, are there any councils who aren't now members or use the LGFA?
No, there aren't. And they're now joining up with the council-controlled organisations are actually able to join as well.
Thank you. So if there's no further questions, a call for a mover and seconder for those two recommendations to receive the annual report. Councillor Mowbenge, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Any debate? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And now we move to the BOPLAS annual report, Bay of Plenty Local Authority Shared Services Limited. So Alan Zur again.
Through the Mayor, again, we'll just take this report as read. Thank you.
Are there any questions for those? There being none, I shall ask for a mover and seconder, please. I shall move that. Councillor Crawford, you can second. Any debate? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So the last item in the open section of the agenda, in page 297, is my report. I'll take that as read, but happy to take any questions. Councillor Thwaites.
Can you share anything that you learned from your talks with New Zealand Rail, with the rail executives and that?
That was primarily a relationship building meeting. I did...
Not new bridges on railway lines and stuff like that.
I did share some of our aspirations, but it wasn't a business meeting as such, but I did take the opportunity to talk to the board members and the CE and about what we might want going forward.
Okay.
Councillor Murray-Benge.
Could I ask, at the Bay of Plenty Agriculture Advisory Committee in Te Puke, were you able to find out what state they're in after this terrible weather that we've been through? How much is production down, for example?
That's a regular topic of conversation over the past year or so, or 9 months. It's because of the nature of the people around the table, there's a lot of discussions, not just the weather, it's whether the bud break was great this year and ongoing things like that. I suspect Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, who is also at the meeting, might be better placed to answer some of the details on that. He's a bit closer to those topics. Did you want to comment, John?
Yeah, well, I could give a very brief answer, but it depends how you talk about them. And I guess from a farming point of view, yes, production was massively down across most sectors during last season. The spring so far this year has been a lot kinder. Dairy production is significantly up on last year, but nobody talks about how much it was down last year. That side of it's turned the corner. And particularly the big one here for kiwi fruit, so far the spring has been a lot kinder and vine springing to life has been much more consistent. Bud break flowering, bees are starting to go into orchards, is looking much more promising. There's a lot more labour around, and people are able to, generally speaking, on top of the jobs, but there is still a lot of work ahead. So generally much improved in that regard compared to the past 12 months at this stage. Early days yet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more optimism this year than last. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, James, I'm wondering if you've got any insights from the Future for Local Government Hui regarding where that's headed, or is it just a case of hurry up and wait for the new government?
Well, I think the best answer there is I understand that all elected members were circulated the outcome or the workings, if you like, of the last Hui we had. So all the post-it notes and our what the feeling amongst the people who were there was from, and I think there's an opportunity also for you to provide your feedback before the next Hui. So I think that's the best. Rather than me trying to summarise it now, if you look at all the hundreds of comments and feedback, that's probably the best way to gauge that. Yeah. Councillor Henry.
And the people that you've met with, is it possible to put, I realise that sometimes they might be of personal nature, but the 3 people here that you've met, you've just got their name down, is it possible to put a context there?
Well, I think it would be better if you've got a question, I'll answer it. I think.
Oh no, I don't have it. I'm just one. When you see a group's name, you've got an idea what context might be about.
Yeah.
But when you see a person's name, you know, was it roading or what was it that they came to see you about? But obviously, if it's personal, you can't put it down. If it's something that's relating to the infrastructure.
Well, for instance, Pamela Greeley, that she was the Green Party candidate. That was sort of getting to know person during the election period. Esther Williams at Pongakawa, that was a roading issue.
Yeah, just like roading, came about roading or that, so it just puts a context in it.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Maybench.
Further one regarding Kiwi Rail Board and senior executives. Did they say what potential increase they can put onto the rail that serves Tauranga?
No, it was a meeting over dinner, and it wasn't a kind of PowerPoint presentation type situation. Yeah.
Isn't.
Yeah, it was a nice dinner. It was good to get to know the executives and board there. But it wasn't a technical meeting, no.
Were they clean?
Yes, they were. Okay, so with that, if there's no further questions, I'll move receipt of my report. Does Councillor Henry would like to second it? Any debate? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So with no information for receipt, we're now going to move to the public excluded section. So I'll call for a mover and seconder to do that. Councillor Henry, Councillor Joyce, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Just leave staff a moment. Thank you, Alicia.